ending with sort of what I see as the definition of what I call sufficiency. In North America, unlike here, everybody has a clothes dryer. And they're all electric, and they're basically taking the inside air and they're heating it with a coil and sticking it out the side of the house, and then new air has to come and replace it. And if you're trying to design an energy efficient building, it's almost impossible. I mean, people who are doing passive houses were building little sheds outside the house and putting the dryer outside there. You had to go outside to use the dryer. And so everybody said, you know, well, what are we going to do? Is there a technological solution? And so they invented a heat pump dryer. It doesn't have to exhaust outside. It just works like a heat pump. It costs 3 times as much. It takes twice as long to dry the clothes. And they're not yet, and they require a huge amount of service so far because it's brand new technology. And everybody just said, oh, this is the answer to the problem. We'll do all of this and we'll just use the heat pump. Whereas in fact the sufficiency, if you think in terms of sufficiency, what's the easiest way to do this? And it's all over Lisbon. I mean, you get a solar powered dryer, you've got moving air, solar power, a piece of string, and it's all you need. And if you think of every problem in terms of sufficiency, what's the easiest way to do it? This is it. And I took so many pictures of clothing in Lisbon last year. I just thought, this is so wonderful. So I won't go over this because it was really to the passive house people about, well, we have to think about more than just energy. We have to think about walkable communities. We have to think about price. We have to think about the future, wildfires, flooding. And we have to think about, of course, the bottom ones, the low embodied carbon. And this is from the English study, my second last slide, which basically laid out what they felt architects should be doing and thinking about every project and every building. That when you start, the best way to reduce carbon is simply to build nothing, to say, well, we don't need this, we're not going to do it. It's effective, not very good for your career. So, you know, alternatives are to build less, to figure out what is the most efficient thing you can do to maximize use of existing assets. Then, this is where we start building clever, where we optimize our material usage, pick the right materials, low carbon materials, then build efficiently, really doing it well, using low carbon construction technologies and eliminate waste. And if you follow that arc, you're sort of dropping the carbon potential and really getting that bottom line that plays out over time as thin as possible as it goes out. And I love that drawing because that really says it all. So, to really do this revolution, we've got to summarize, build as efficiently as we possibly can. We've got to decarbonize the materials. I mean, I love the concrete in this building. It's just absolutely beautiful, but there's a lot of it, and it's beautifully done. Simplicity, radical simplicity. This is a simple building, and I really admire it for that. But we have to think about it in everything that we do. I mean, I'm told that in Portuguese architecture, there wasn't a lot of money to go around, and so the buildings were very simple, and then you put beautiful tile over everything. I don't know if that's the actual story, but I've seen some beautiful buildings that were simple and covered with tile, and I thought that was a very good way to do it. And ultimately, radical sufficiency. What do we really need these days? In this society now, do we have to have the car when we can get around with the e-bike? Do we have to build the bigger bedroom? Do we have to add the next floor? Who was the architect who just did that beautiful, beautiful house in Porto? That was just such a simple, elegant thing.
Márcio Dias. He presented that building yesterday. It's the most recent Passivhaus certified in Portugal and the first in the Porto district. And you can see the presentation at our website. It's a very simple, sufficient building, like he says.
It's enough. Anyhow, thank you very much. And
questions? Claims?
complaints?
Complaint. an environmental scientist, so I'm not an architect, I'm kind of infiltrated here.
Right.
I don't have really questions, just want to congratulate you for the brilliant presentation. As an environmental scientist, I'm deeply concerned about what we have to do in the next 10, 15 years to solve all of the carbon problem, as you highlighted. And I just think to achieve these 4 fundamental steps, we also have to have a radical change of environmental awareness to implement this, because we will need the magnitude, the order of magnitude for change is so deep that we really need that architects and urban planners embody all of this.
And environmental scientists.
And environmental scientists to transform.
I know. And that's the hard thing about
it's
it,
a
because
huge challenge. But I think that
how long is it going to take Norman Foster to build that airport? Well past 2030. And the airplane industry isn't changing very much. I mean, in Europe, when I last came here last year, it cost me less money to fly from London to Porto than it did to take the train from Porto to Aveiro. I said, this is insane. This is fundamentally wrong and distorted. And unless we fix those distortions, we're not going to get out of this.
Yeah, still about the buildings and the transportation. Very important point, I think, is we have some countries, you mentioned Denmark and Holland, where it took a long time for this change of mentality in society to take place. And my question is not about selling e-bikes, it's about how we transform the society for transportation. I think it's going to have a huge impact of this. Regulatory bodies, governments have a huge impact, and they have a huge responsibility on how they can regulate the countries for that. That's how Holland started. That's the opposite of what we do in North America with sprawling and all those issues. What do you see the status moving forward about those things?
Well, the thing is, you mentioned the Netherlands, you mentioned Holland, and it's an interesting thing about why did Holland, Netherlands get like it is with so many bicycles. And what actually happened in 1974 in Holland was a people's revolution. There were hundreds and hundreds of children were getting killed by cars all the time, and people got mad, and it was basically Kindermord something, stop the child murders. And there are pictures of them blockading streets and turning over cars and painting graffiti over that, and it was from the ground up movement of people saying, stop these cars in our streets. And so then the politicians who got elected by promising to stop the child deaths, which I think were 500 a year and are now down to 2 a year, changed the roads, started taxing cars, removing parking spaces, and making bike lanes and subsidizing bikes. So it was a revolution from the people. And when I showed those pictures of the Extinction Rebellion and the student strikes in Lisbon, and that happened all over the world,
I think that
my only hope is that we're going to get that kind of thing that happened in the Netherlands in '74 happening now. That people will say, we have to change this now.
Yeah, also, I think the design part is very important. If you go to any city, for example, in Holland, you can safely bike, not the way you said in Lisbon or in Porto, because you don't have bike paths and everything. No. You have everywhere. So the people the heads of the municipalities, the cities, everybody, I mean, what are they doing to make the paradigm change? So you have conditions to use other forms of transportation that are more environmentally conscious.
It's a thing that came out of Scandinavia called Vision Zero, where you can't just bring in rules like dropping the speed limit. You have to, like you say, change the designs of the streets. And where I live in Toronto, I just read, 2 more senior citizens killed in 2 days because the streets are wide and the cars go too fast and the traffic lights aren't long enough. And as the population ages, people like me take longer to get across the street. And they're being killed in huge numbers. So things have to change with the aging population. And more bicyclists are getting killed because there are more bicyclists. And that's so you get young people on bikes getting killed, and you get old people who are trying to walk across the street getting killed, and all the people in cars saying, gee, I wonder what's wrong. So we have so many things that we have to change, not just the buildings, but our roads and our planning. All have to go together if we're going to solve this. And like you say, it's like, to do that in 10 years?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Query. It's more about the North American example because it's more extreme. You said take advantage of the pre-existing buildings, roads, the infrastructure. But for example, in the North America, the suburbia, the sprawl, you have the pre-existing buildings, the houses, miles and kilometers away. You have the highways, the infrastructure, and how can you combine this apparent contradiction between you have to take advantage of the pre-existence, but at the same time you know that the pre-existence is sustainable, and we are talking about in a large scale.
You have to start by changing the functions of the buildings.
You know what? Yes, but the building with housing, it's in North America, it's sprawling for kilometers and kilometers.
Well, that's why I think e-bikes are going to make a big difference, because you can go for miles in an e-bike. So if they take one of those 6 lanes and make it a safe bike lane, and they give people e-bikes instead of regular bikes, I think it can make a difference. The other thing is just, what are the incentives? What does a liter of gas cost here? I saw today €1.38, and I did a translation into that, and then they pay 1/3 of that for gasoline in the United States, and we pay half of that. And what did that do when gas is so cheap? They all started buying those big SUVs that use more fuel. And they all started driving further distance because the houses were cheaper. So how do we change it? The first thing you do is triple the price of gas, which of course will start a revolution like it did.
We already did that.
And natural gas, it's so hard to talk about energy efficiency in North America when they just about give the natural gas away. It's so cheap, it doesn't cost anything. So, when we're saying gas is really terrible, it's bad for the air, it's bad for the environment, but the way they get the gas out of the ground with the fracking, they've got to get rid of it fast. In fact, in some places they pay for you to take the gas away.
Then another point would be the tax on CO2.
Yes.
How to build a cost of that.
But that's the Canadian government, the current Prime Minister that we have, Justin Trudeau, almost lost his job over that carbon tax. He didn't because the opposition guy was a total idiot, but if there'd been a good politician there, he'd be gone because of carbon tax. People don't think about this. Is how do you get people to care? They don't care. I don't know. Trying to be optimistic and lay out a program. If we do these things, we can solve it. And it's going to be, I think, the push from the young people that is going to do it. The Extinction Rebellion, the student strike, and people who are saying...
They're the ones that have more to lose by
They have the most to lose. And the baby boomers think, we'll be dead before it happens, but it's not true. They've all got another 20, 25 years to go, and things are going to be pretty rough if we don't fix this now.
I just would like to add one thing, that because when we see that it's a beautiful image, the future we want, Elon Musk, the Tesla, the big house, and we discussed this yesterday. Most of our decision making is based on emotions, okay? And what Elon Musk is trying to sell is an idea. So he's selling the idea that he wants all of us to share, to accomplish. And I think one thing that you said points this clearly, because we have to completely separate and try to distinguish what we need from what we desire.
Yes.
And this, to do this, we have to, as a collective action group, we have to raise our awareness.
It's marketing. I mean, we've been marketed the SUVs as being powerful. We've been marketing the big lawn as a sign of success. It's all, and I don't believe the Passivhaus people who are doing a very good job of marketing. I think again, it's getting into, some people think that, you know, SUVs, if you drive an SUV, it's just evil. And I know, and they're becoming, I think they're going to be going out of fashion because of this. And that's marketing. So.
Well, I have a question. It's probably difficult to answer, but nevertheless, what can we do, regardless of being an architect or environmental scientist, or as citizens?
Are you an architect? No.
I'm not. No, I'm very interested in this topic, and for example, I lived in Porto for a lot of years, and I used to think that Porto was so perfect to blend history with that consciousness, that ecological consciousness, and I didn't see that happening because tourism just happens so fast.
Oh, yes.
And I'm not seeing that happening actually. So I keep questioning myself, what can I do as a citizen to bring that awareness to my colleagues, to the city hall, to, I don't know.
It's really hard. I used to say, stop eating meat and get a bike and, you know, live near where you work, but our individual actions aren't going to be enough to really move the needle. You know, I ride a bike and I only eat meat once a week, but then I flew to France in the spring and I flew here for this, and I blew my carbon budget for 2 years just doing that. And you're going to tell me I can't come to Porto? I mean, it's really hard. So we all have to work collectively to sort of change the mindset, to say, you know, you're driving 3 blocks to buy a bag of groceries, you're an idiot. I mean, this is the kind of mindset change that we have to do.
Do you think like co-ops are a good option?
I do. We have to all work together and cooperatively. What co-ops can decide what food is in season, where do we locate, you know, how do we do these things. I've only been in Porto a couple of hours. I was going to say, you know, get people on bikes, but wow, those hills and that stone, I don't think I'd last 10 minutes on a bike here. So I really don't know what the answers are. But what does the environmental scientists say? What do you advise?
I think that I agree with what you said. What you asked is really challenging, but ultimately I think it has to come from above, from
Regulation.
From new public policy, from making public policy with new goals, and the environment clearly should be the overall goal.
In 1947, all the airlines agreed there would be no tax on airplane fuel, because how do you do it when they're going from country to country? This country's expensive, this company's cheap. So they did an international policy agreement, no tax on airplane fuel. Tax on gasoline is half the price or two-thirds of the price on gasoline. So it's like giving a subsidy to Ryanair and everyone to make flying so cheap. And you know, governments can't do anything. It's by international treaty. And those are the kinds of things. You change that regulation, you triple the price of gas that goes of aviation fuel. It's the single biggest cost in air transport is the fuel. And triple that, and suddenly a lot fewer people are going to be flying to Porto for the weekend. Anyhow, people are starting to sneak out, so I'm going to say thank you for coming. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you. Oh.
Caríssimo, vá, obrigado.
Thank you. Yeah, well, no, I haven't done the other one. I know this one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Here.
I'll use the other one someday.